A few weeks ago, I was driving home from a low-paying art job to a weekend retreat. I needed some inspiration. So, I took the abandoned stretch of Highway 17. I wanted peace and quiet. At first, everything felt normal. The road was so quiet I could only hear the rustle of leaves outside. I passed some old, rusting signs that faded into the woods. They warned of ghost towns, but I ignored them. I never believed in weird stuff. But as evening fell, a discomfort crept in. The silence felt heavy. It made my skin crawl. Then I saw her. A woman stood by the roadside in a tattered dress. Her hair hung over her face. I couldn't see her expression, but something pulled at me. I thought she looked like she needed help. I pulled over. She walked to my car slowly. A chill ran through me, even though it was warm outside. She climbed into the back seat. "Can you take me to Oak Hollow?" she whispered. I didn't know where that was, but I nodded. Maybe I was too tired to think straight. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, she wasn't there. My heart raced. Had I imagined her? I pulled over, my mind racing. Had I fallen asleep? The next day I tried to shake it off. I kept driving, but the memory stuck with me. That evening I spotted him. An old man with a gaunt face waved me down. He looked worn out, like he had been out there forever. I felt uneasy but stopped again. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I never get there," he mumbled, staring at me with sad eyes. I felt discomfort creep in, but I didn't want to be rude. I drove on, his icy stare lingering on my skin. The next day I picked up a young boy. He had wide, hypnotic eyes. "I hear whispers from the road," he said. I thought he was just playing around, but something about him felt serious. Then he turned to me and asked, "You hear them too, don't you?" I looked around. The woods looked alive, almost watching. I didn't know how to answer. Those evenings still play in my mind. I can't explain what happened. Were they real? Or was I losing my mind? I drove that road again yesterday. It felt different. I was hoping to find answers. But as I drove on, the memories clawed at me. Then I heard a voice in the car. "Why are you here?" It was clear as day. I turned around, my heart racing. I was alone. Nobody else was in the car. I gripped the wheel, feeling cold sweat trickle down my back. I've avoided that stretch of road since then. I still wonder about those encounters. They haunt me. And for the first time in my life, I find it hard to sleep. I avoided Highway 17 for a week. It was torture, but my mind felt clearer. I tried to dive into my art, but nothing clicked. The shapes and colors danced but wouldn't settle on the canvas. I needed something to hold on to, something real. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling I needed to return. It was a restless Thursday evening when I made the decision. I drove towards the old stretch, my palms sweaty around the steering wheel. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows. The road still felt wrong, but I had to know. As I approached the spot where I saw the woman, I slowed down. My heart hammered like a drum. I didn't want to see her again, but part of me needed closure. The trees loomed ominously, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. Yet, I pressed on. It wasn't long before I caught sight of something unusual. A flickering light off the side of the road, like an old lantern swaying in the wind. I pulled over, drawn by it, despite every instinct telling me to drive on. The light moved closer, revealing a figure. Another woman, this one wearing a bright floral dress that seemed out of place in the encroaching darkness. "Help me," she said, her voice cheerful yet disconcerting. It didn't match the fear tightening my chest. "I'm lost." I peered closely, trying to gauge if she was like the others, but her smile seemed genuine. "I live just up ahead. Can you give me a ride?" I hesitated. What if she vanished like the others? But something about her warm eyes made me nod. She climbed into the passenger seat, and I felt a rush of relief. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to chase the bizarre feeling lurking in the air. "Call me Clara," she said. I was attending a gathering nearby, but it ended early. "Where's your place?" I questioned, scanning the road ahead. which was still just an endless stretch of trees. "Just a little further," she replied, her voice lulling me into a sense of calm. We drove in silence, and I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that nestled deeper each moment. The woods pressed in, and I could almost hear them sighing. Then Clara asked, "Do you ever wonder about the past?" Her eyes sparkled with an unsettling curiosity. "What do you mean?" I glanced at her, but she was staring straight ahead. "About all those who never left this road." The words sent a chill through me. My breath caught. They didn't have a choice, you know. Before I could respond, the headlights flickered. The car lurched and the engine began to sputter. I turned the key, praying for a spark. It felt like the world outside shifted, shadows writhing in the dim light. "Clara, what's wrong?" I asked, panic rising. Her laughter echoed softly. "Don't let them take you too." Then everything went dark. I panicked, frantically hitting the ignition. That's when I saw it. The passenger's side. Clara was gone. I was alone again, the weight of silence pressing in. I turned to look outside, clenching the wheel. Was it just my imagination? I couldn't think straight. The door clicked open, and fresh air rushed in. As I stepped out, I spotted something on the ground. My breath hitched. It was a small child's shoe, dusty and worn. I felt eyes on me. I needed to leave. Now. But as I turned, a shadow flitted in my periphery. The road was waiting. I could sense it. I had to know more. But how much was too much? The sound of the engine sputtering still echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of stuff I thought I escaped. I stepped back from the car, the shadows of the trees stretching ominously. That small shoe felt heavy in my hand. I dropped it as if it burned. I wanted to run, but the road seemed to beckon, urging me closer. I glanced left, then right. Everything was still. Too still. The faintest whisper of the wind danced through the leaves, almost as if it was trying to tell me something. I took a deep breath and forced myself to look up the road. The flickering light had vanished, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't truly alone. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. It was a figure standing just inside the tree line. My heart soared, then pounded, caught between relief and dread. As I squinted into the darkness, I realized it wasn't just any figure. A lanky silhouette stepped onto the road, arms hanging loosely at their sides. "Hey!" I shouted, unsure whether I was being stupid or brave. The figure paused, then moved closer. It was a man, and despite the dark, I could see the weary lines etched across his face. "Help me," he said, but his voice was gravelly, filled with a weariness that made my skin crawl. "My car broke down. Can you give me a ride?" I started, hesitation creeping into my speech. This wasn't a good idea. The first woman, Clara, was unnerving enough. But the desperate look in his eyes drew me in, even when logic screamed at me to just get back in the car and drive away. "Please, I've been waiting for hours." His eyes darted to the woods like he was afraid of something deeper than the darkness. "There's something out here. Something in the woods?" The fear twisted inside me, and the impact of his words wrapped around my gut. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Something that watches. You need to get out of here." I glanced back at my car and debate churned inside me. I couldn't leave him, but standing there felt like a decision leading me toward danger. "Where is your car?" I asked, desperate to find a foothold in this dizzying situation. "Not far, just up the road, please." His urgency cut through the cool night air, reminding me that I wasn't the only one agitated. I could feel the woodlands closing in. "I can't," I finally said, backing away. "I think I should just leave." At that, the man's eyes grew wild. "You don't understand. This road isn't just a road." He took a step toward me, but I held my ground. Each inch my heart raced faster. The moment hung thick and somehow alive, like I could feel the weight of the trees pressing in. Then above the murmur of the night I heard a sound, a distant crunching, like footsteps approaching. The man's gaze snapped toward the noise, panic flooding his features. "Get in the car!" he shouted, pointing back to my vehicle. I turned to run, legs moving before I thought it through. But as I darted back, I dared a glance over my shoulder. The figure remained, But the woods behind him shifted again, a flicker of movement amid the darkness. I fumbled with the door handle, adrenaline coursing through me. Just as I leapt inside, my heart thundered in my chest. I threw the car in reverse, eyes glued to the figure. Would he follow? The roadside swallowed every sound. And then I saw it, a flash of white, a figure emerging from the trees. I couldn't breathe. What was happening on this road? All I knew was that I had to get away before whatever it was caught up to me. I pressed the gas, and the car rocketed forward into the unknown. The sound of crunching footsteps faded behind me, but one unshakable thought lingered. This was only the beginning. I drove faster than I had ever driven before, heart racing, hands gripping the wheel. The trees blurred into streaks of dark green and black, and I felt like I was escaping some nightmare, yet a part of me was drawn to the mystery that lingered behind. My mind raced. The man's worried face haunted me. Why hadn't I stopped? What was in those woods? I needed to focus on getting away, but curiosity clawed at me. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that man chasing after me. As I approached a small bend in the road, my headlights caught something in the distance. A sign, barely visible, read, "Welcome to Pine Hollow," with a date scratched out beneath it. The letters were dusty, like it hadn't been maintained in years. I wasn't sure if it was a town or just another trick of the dark. The road curved and dipped. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding when the engine roared steadily beneath me again. At least I didn't have that strange figure to contend with anymore. But just as I was beginning to feel a glimmer of safety, the headlights illuminated something ahead. There was a girl standing beside the road, her figure small and slender. She wore a frayed dress and her hair hung in tangled strings over her face. She couldn't have been more than 12. Fear washed over me like cold water. I wanted to keep driving, but she raised a hand. "Please help me," she called out, her voice hauntingly soft but eerily calm. "Not again," I muttered under my breath, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Images of the man flashed through my mind. What if she was just another apparition meant to lure me closer? I slowed down, but didn't come to a complete stop. "Where are your parents?" I asked. It felt foolish to me, the question hanging in the air, a lifeline thrown into darkness. "They are gone," she replied, her eyes hollow. "I'm alone." The pit in my stomach twisted tighter. I glanced out the window, searching for the telltale signs of danger. Behind her, the woods loomed ominously, shadows writhing slightly as if something was shifting just beyond my sight. "Get in the car," I said, a mix of suspicion and sympathy rising in me. She hesitated, then stepped toward me, her feet shoesless and dirty. Suddenly a rustling came from the trees, like 100 hushed whispers converging. Alarm bells rang in my head. "No, no, stay there," I shouted, hesitant to engage too much. What if this was a trap? The crunch of footsteps echoed closer, the weight of unseen entities closing in. She blinked slowly, tears spilling over her cheeks. "Help me, please," she repeated. But this time, her voice felt different, more urgent. Then I saw it. Just behind her, a dark shape emerged from the woods. My heart dropped as I strained to see, trying to discern friend from foe in the graveness of the night. The eyes glinted, menacing, huge, and predatory. I slammed the car into drive, desperate to leave. "I can't," I yelled as I pressed the gas, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread settle in my chest. But just as I turned away, a scream rang out, piercing the night stillness. I jerked back around, the girl's terrified expression seared into my memory. That scream felt like a death knell, echoing in my mind long after I passed by. I had to get out of there. The road twisted before me, and I pushed the accelerator harder, praying I could escape whatever had found its way to the surface in that haunting place. Then, as I turned down a long straightaway, I could see headlights coming toward me, and a shadowy figure stood at the roadside, waiting for rescue. My pulse raced again, and I felt like I was spiraling deeper into a nightmare I could not understand. Should I stop? Should I turn around? But before I could decide, everything blacked out. I woke with a jolt, the sound of the car's engine sputtering waking me from a dark, dreamless sleep. Blinking against the sudden brightness, I saw the familiar stretch of the road before me. But the night around me had changed. The woods no longer loomed. They were suffocated by a thick fog that cast an eerie glow over everything. It felt as if time had slid away while I was unconscious. Panic surged. I checked the clock on my dashboard. Minutes had turned into hours. I must have crashed, but the car was intact. Heart pounding, I punched the accelerator to see if I could get the engine to respond, but all I heard was a weak sputter. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign of life. Other cars, lights, anything. I was isolated, but somehow it felt worse than before. Then, I noticed that new figure emerging from the fog, shrouded in a haze. My breath caught in my throat. It approached my window. The man wore a brown coat that seemed outdated, a soft cap pulled low over his brow. He leaned toward my open window, his face unreadable. "You all right?" he asked, voice low and gravelly. Something about his demeanor felt unsettling, like he knew more than he was letting on. I think so," I stammered, clenching the steering wheel for support. "My car, it just died." He nodded slowly, as if noting my fear. "We don't get many passing through here. This road doesn't hold good fortune, that's for sure." "What do you mean?" I demanded, wanting to dismiss the sense of dread tightening in my gut. "There's things out there," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the woods. It felt like he was trying to tell me something important, but his eyes darted everywhere, making me uneasy. "People go missing, time and time again." A chill settled over me as I remembered the girl's scream. "Do you know anything about a girl?" I pressed, desperation creeping into my tone. He hesitated, looking into the darkness, as if weighing his next words. "You shouldn't get involved with them." Just then, something shifted in the fog behind him, movements barely visible through the shifting shadows. I squinted to see better, heart racing. It felt wrong to stay, to linger, but I couldn't peel my eyes away from that spot. "What's back there?" My voice was barely a whisper. But when he turned back, a shiver ran down my spine as I noticed the fear that had hidden behind his stoic facade. He took a step back, eyes wide. "You should go," he urged. "Now, trust me." I didn't need telling twice. I turned the key, praying the engine would start up, and it roared to life, surprising me. I glanced back at him, wanting to ask so many more questions but too afraid to linger. I threw the gear into drive and sped away, the fog seemingly clinging to my rearview mirror as I accelerated. But as I turned to head down the dirt road, I saw something flash in the mirror, a figure standing where the man had been. A familiar face, pale and sorrowful, watching my retreat with a haunting stillness. I felt the weight of their eyes on me, even as the distance grew. I had to figure out what happened, and I had to do it fast, because it seemed there was something else stirring in the darkness, something that wanted me back. The road twisted ahead, the fog thickening around me, swallowing the headlights. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that those eyes were still on me. I glanced at my GPS, but the screen flickered and faded. No signal out here. Ahead, the road dipped suddenly into a hollow. I tore through, hoping to distance myself from the figure and the growing sense of dread. As I peered into the shadows, something on the edge of the woods caught my eye, another glimpse of movement. I slammed on the brakes, heart racing. It was a woman standing under an old, gnarled tree. Her clothes hung tattered, and her hair fell over her face. It took a moment for me to realize she was staring directly at me. I felt drawn in, even as alarm bells went off in my mind. Was this another trick? I should have kept driving. But my curiosity pushed me to roll down the window. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. She didn't answer at first, just stepped closer to the road, her movements slow and deliberate. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the engine. I strained to hear. Something about her expression felt both pleading and menacing. "Where are you headed?" Photos of past hikers flashed through my mind, those lost souls the man had mentioned. I fought the urge to lock the doors. "Please, I need you to take me with you," she insisted, stepping into the dim light of my car. They're coming for me. Who's coming? I felt the cold grip of panic. The shadows around her seemed to stretch and swirl with life. I was teetering on the edge of something I couldn't quite comprehend. Not safe, she rasped, swaying slightly as if losing her balance. You can't drive away from this. I took a step back, pressing against my seat. This was too familiar. Anything tied to that man was bound to end badly. A flash of the girl's scream echoed in my mind, but I could see fear in her eyes, a raw desperation that tugged at my heart. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain some control. Get in then. Just hurry. The words slipped out before I could think them through, and my heart sank. She moved quickly, her bony limbs sliding into the passenger seat. The moment she shut the door, a chill washed over me. I felt an unmistakable dread. The atmosphere inside the car shifted, thickening with something I couldn't name. Drive, she urged, eyes darting to the rearview mirror. I didn't hesitate. I slapped the gear into drive and hit the gas, the tires spinning on the gravel before I found grip. The engine roared, cutting through the silence as we sped away. But just then, I glanced in the mirror. Even through the fog, I saw figures lurking at the edge of the woods. Who are they? I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. Her face turned pale, her eyes wide. They want to take me back. You have to go faster. Adrenaline surged. I pushed the accelerator harder, but dread twisted in my gut. What had I gotten myself into? As the trees blurred past, I could feel the air growing colder, the darkness creeping in closer. Suddenly, I spotted movement out of the corner of my eye, figures lining the road behind us, and then everything went dark. I jolted awake, heart racing. My car was still moving, but I couldn't remember how I got here. The fog was thicker than before, pressing in on all sides. I could barely see the road ahead, barely make out the shape of the woman beside me. Are you okay? I croaked, my voice cracking. Her gaze was fixed on the darkness outside, a frown creasing her pale face. They're getting closer. Drive faster. I gripped the wheel tighter. Closer? Who? The word barely escaped my lips before I felt the tension in the air. Before she could respond, a loud thud echoed from somewhere behind us, jolting the car. The sound reverberated, as if something large had hit the trunk. I darted a glance in the rearview mirror. The figures were more distinct now, shadowy shapes, moving in unison, almost like a swarm. Please, they're coming, the woman shouted, her voice urgent. I pressed the gas pedal down harder, the engine straining. The trees blurred around me, but panic was clouding my thoughts. What do they want? Me, she sobbed, tears streaming down her cheeks now, catching the faint light. I shouldn't have tried to escape. My chest tightened. I didn't know what to do. I was driving fast, but the weight of fear hung heavy in the air. Escape from what? From them. She pointed desperately to the back of the car. We have to find a place to hide. They can't follow us inside. Hiding. There was no time for that. I needed to keep moving. What if I call for help? I offered, scrambling for my phone. But I remembered the signal. It was useless out here. Suddenly, the woman screamed. I swung my head back toward the road, nearly losing control of the wheel. A flash of movement crossed in front of the car. It was another figure. A man standing in the fog, arms raised as if to stop me. I swerved, narrowly missing him, but that wasn't the end. The car started to slide. My heart stuck in my throat as I fought to regain control. The tires screeched against the gravel, and I prayed I wouldn't flip over. Keep your eyes on the road, the woman yelled, panic breaking through the urgency. I'm trying, I yelled back, struggling to right the car. In the turmoil around us, I caught sight of the man in the rearview mirror. He was watching us. Then he grinned. Fear washed over me. What is wrong with him? The woman leaned forward, her expression intense. He's one of them. Don't look at him. Keep driving. I obeyed, tearing my eyes from the mirror and focusing on the road ahead. The fog was starting to lift, but my mind raced. What did they want? What had she escaped from? As the trees opened up into a clearing, I spotted a small, dilapidated cabin. There! I shouted impulsively. "We can hide there." "Are you crazy?" she cried. "It's a trap." But it was either that, or let them catch us. I turned the wheel, aiming for the cabin as terror surged in my veins. The moment I skidded to a halt and shut off the engine, the air felt thick with dread. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. But as I glanced to my side, the seat was empty. "Where did she go?" I whispered, panic bubbling over. Then, in the fog, I saw a shadow moving toward the cabin. That's when I knew. I wasn't safe at all. I stumbled out of the car, panic racing through my veins. I wanted to panic, to scream, but instead, I crouched low, heart hammering in my chest. Where had she gone? The shadow in the fog moved closer to the cabin. With every step, dread crawled under my skin. I stayed low and quiet, trying to blend into the shadows of the trees. The woman had warned me, but what choice did I have? I had to know what was happening. I peered through a broken window of the cabin. The interior was dim, illuminated only by a ray of moonlight creeping through the cracks. Boxes lay scattered about, covered in dust. Nothing stirred inside. Just silence. Suddenly the silhouette stepped closer, halting outside the door. It was her. Relief washed over me, but I didn't dare breathe. I watched as she slowly turned and faced the darkness. Her expression was one of fear, and she bit her lip, glancing quickly back toward me even though I knew she couldn't see me. I wanted to call out to reassure her, but I held my breath instead. Then I caught sight of it. A second shadow loomed just beyond her. It was tall and distorted, shifting as though it were made of smoke. My stomach dropped. "Run!" I finally croaked, unable to hold back the fear any longer. I shot to my feet, sprinting towards her. She whipped around, eyes wide as she spotted me breaking through the line of trees. Just as I reached her, the dark figure lunged forward, moving almost like it was gliding through the air. I grabbed her wrist, yanking her away just as icy fingertips brushed against my arm. I could feel the chill crawling over my skin. "Get inside," I gasped, pulling her toward the cabin. She hesitated, glancing back, the terror etched on her face. "Wait, we can't go in there," she exclaimed, a hint of desperation creeping into her voice. Before I could argue, the figure broke into a sprint, mirroring our movements, and I pushed her toward the door, urgency clouding my head. "Now!" We tumbled inside and slammed the door shut, the noise echoing off the walls like a gunshot. Breathing hard, I pressed my back against the door, trying to listen over the frantic thumping of my heart. "What is it?" she whispered, eyes darting around the room. "What did you see?" It was right there," I stammered, pointing to where I last saw it. "It was like a shadow, but wrong." "Wrong," she repeated, her face going pale. "It's not just a shadow, it's hunting me. We have to leave before it gets in." I shook my head. "We can't. What if it's outside waiting for us?" As we stood there, the cabin creaked ominously. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows. My skin prickled with dread. I needed to know what we were dealing with. "Tell me what you escaped from," I urged, trying to steady my voice. But she shook her head, hands trembling. "You'll wish you hadn't asked." Just then, the air went cold, and an otherworldly sound filled the room. An echoing whisper that chilled me to the bone. It was drawing closer. Then everything went dark. I blinked against the darkness, trying to make sense of where I was. The cabin was gone, replaced by a void that throbbingly enveloped us both. I felt her beside me, her presence a fragile thread I clung to. My heart raced with a mix of fear and confusion. "Can you see anything?" I whispered, anxiety tightening my throat. "No," she replied, her voice barely a breath. "But I can feel it. It's here." I held my breath, straining to hear over the silence. Then just beyond the dark, I caught the slightest sound. A soft shuffling, like footsteps approaching. My skin prickled. "Stay close," I urged, trying to sound confident. "If it comes for us, we need to stick together." I could sense her shivering in the dark. The shadows felt alive, swirling around us, and suddenly the whisper returned, clearer this time, as if it were circling us. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice breaking through the silence. It felt like madness, challenging whatever was out there. But the only answer was the thick quiet, thickening like fog, suffocating. I think it's going to... Her words were interrupted by a sudden rush of air, like a gust of icy wind crashing into us. The whispers intensified, wrapping around our ears. I stumbled backwards, nearly losing my balance, but she gripped my arm. "We need to find a way out," she urged, panic coloring her words. I felt blindly around the space, searching for the walls, a door, anything that might lead us to safety. My fingers brushed against something hard. A table, maybe? I kept probing, trying to map out our prison in the dark. "Over here," I called, pulling her toward where the outline of a wall loomed large. I could see a faint glimmer, a crack of light spilling through something. "Is that a window?" she whispered, hope igniting in her voice. "No," I said. "I think it's a door." As I reached for the handle, the whispers transformed into a cacophony, a menacing roar that echoed in my mind. I hesitated, my hand hovering just above the knob. "Do you hear that?" I said, looking back at her in fright. Her eyes shone with fear, and I knew we had no choice. I twisted the handle and pushed the door open. The blinding light surged in, displacing the shadows like a retreating tide. But beyond the threshold stood what looked like an empty room, with walls covered in unfamiliar symbols, glowing faintly as if they were alive. "What is this place?" I murmured, stepping into the light. Then just beyond the corner, I saw something move. A figure emerged, its features wrapped in darkness, flickering like a dying candle. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. "Who are you?" I shouted, panic seizing me again. "I am." "Your past," it rasped, echoing with countless voices. The ground trembled beneath my feet. I knew we had just stepped into something far worse than we imagined. And the whispering grew louder, filling my head with the promise of secrets best left buried. Then everything went silent again, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. I snapped awake, the sharp contrast of bright light and oppressive darkness disorienting me. Heart racing, I took a moment to absorb my surroundings. I was still in the cabin, but the room felt changed, alive with an unsettling energy. Whatever had tried to absorb us just moments ago was now gone, replaced by an eerie silence that settled like fog over my mind. The woman, her name slipped my memory, stood against the wall, her pale face lit by a ghostly glow that radiated from the symbols etched into the floor. I felt an ache of panic squeeze around me as I took in her distraught expression. "What just happened?" I gasped. The symbols flickered like stars, bathing the room in an otherworldly light. "It's here," she whispered, her eyes wide with horror. "It wants to keep us, to consume us." I blinked, unsure of whether to believe her, but my instincts warned me of the danger pressing on us from the edges of this strange room. "We have to get out of here," I insisted. The urge to flee pulsed through me, mingling with a growing knowledge that we might be at the eye of a storm. As if responding to my panic, a distant sound echoed, akin to distant thunder rolling through the void. The walls vibrated, and cracks began to form, streaking across the surface. The whispers re-emerged, taunting us with incoherent promises of safety and darkness, urging us to linger. "Run!" I yelled, charging toward the door we had just opened. I grabbed her wrist. She hesitated, her breathing ragged as she searched my eyes. "You said it was hunting you. Don't let it catch hold," I urged. The sound behind us intensified, and an overwhelming weight of despair filled the air. Without waiting for a response, I wrenched the door wide open. The brightness flooded in like a waterfall, dragging us into the light. We stumbled through, landing in another clearing, the oppressive symbols of the cabin fading behind us. Surrounded by dense woods, I felt both relief and dread. I turned to assess our surroundings. We were back outside, or at least it seemed so, yet the road was completely gone, replaced by a dense thicket of trees that teetered ominously, whispering like the shadows that had haunted us. "Where are we?" she gasped, glancing around in disbelief. "I don't know," I confessed, the knot of anxiety tightening back in my chest. This didn't feel real. It felt like a dream caught between night and day. The shifting leaves above seemed to hum in rhythm with the fear thrumming through me. The whispers intensified, wrapping around us in a suffocating embrace, dark and suffused with mockery. I could feel it creeping closer, luring us back with whispered promises of refuge. With no clear direction, I took a moment to catch my breath, scanning the terrain frantically. I didn't want to linger, but it felt like we were caught in some kind of threshold between two worlds. "What do we do now?" I breathed, adrenaline still pulsing. Her gaze darted between the trees as though she expected them to come alive. "We can't stay here. We might get pulled back in." She took a step toward the thinning line of light that led deeper into the woods, both a salvation and a trap. "Wait, where are you going?" I called after her, but she kept moving forward as if she could sense something I couldn't. "Trust me, we have to counter it. There's a way." Her voice trailed off as she stepped into the line of trees, disappearing among the branches. My heart dropped. "No!" I rushed after her, feeling the weight of the air shift. What if she was right? What if I wasn't ready to face whatever was calling us back? But her words lingered like a haunting echo, compounding my fears. Pushing through the foliage, I lost sight of her but kept moving forward, desperate to reclaim our escape. Shadows twisted around me, the whispers materializing into shapes that darted just beyond my peripheral vision. Each rustle sent shivers racing down my spine. I couldn't let it draw me back. I couldn't let it take me. As I wove between trees, a flicker of movement caught my attention. There she was, to my relief and horror, standing before an ancient tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted. She seemed entranced, eyes wide and glassy. "Stop!" I shouted, rushing toward her, but the shadows grabbed at my ankles, reluctant to let go. The pressure in the air grew heavier. I think I can bargain with it," she murmured, her voice trailing into the wind. "If I offer myself—" "No!" I shouted, grasping her shoulders, shaking her. "You can't! It's a trap! You can't believe it!" Her gaze flickered with doubt as she briefly snapped back to reality. "But what if it's the only way?" She seemed lost, still partially caught in the murmurings of the darkness. My heart raced as I combated the rising tide of despair. "We find another way. Together. Don't give up." But it was too late. Her expression shifted, the darkness clawing back into her mind, and I felt the pressure mount as the weight of unseen eyes surrounded us. "Help me," she whispered, almost as if it was a death knell. In that moment, a wave of dread washed over me, amplifying my own fear. The figures emerged again close to us, but this time I felt a pull, a distinct gravitational force urging me back to the primordial darkness. Without thinking, I seized her hand and yanked her away from the root of the old tree, just as the shadows lunged toward us, tendrils reaching out like grasping claws. We ran blindly through the underbrush, the forest closing in as the whispers crescendoed into screams of rage behind us. "Keep moving," I urged, knowing I couldn't look back. Just as the pressure of shadows felt like it was about to overwhelm us, a light pierced through the darkness ahead, beckoning and pulsing like an heartbeat. The doorway back to the world we both had moments ago. "Almost there!" I shouted, desperation fueling my stride as I pulled her along. But the air felt thick, heavy, and charged with the weight of the losing darkness. It was now or never. And then I felt it, the weight of countless eyes tearing at our backs. The pulse of whatever haunted us was summoning us back into its fold, and dread rushed through my veins. Just as we reached the blinding light, I felt myself stumble, my grip slipping. "No!" I cried, pulling hard against her as the shadows clawed for me, trying to drag me back to their depths. But as the blinding light enveloped us, and reality shimmered, I heard a distant scream reach my ears, a whisper that carried in the winds. The shadows fell away, and with a final surge, we burst through, falling onto solid ground. I blinked at the scene unfolding around us. The highway beyond, the familiar stretch of pavement we had started from weeks ago, was a mere illusion, the trees lining the side appearing as sentinels of the past. Yet something simmered at the edges of my consciousness. Panting and disoriented, I pushed myself up, eyes scanning for the woman. "Where are you?" I called out, heart dropping. "Did we make it?" She lay sprawled a few feet away, breathing heavily, seemingly free from the dark grasp of the woods. But something was off. Her face was pallid, eyes glazed. "Are you okay?" I asked, rushing to her side, desperate to shake off the lingering fear. But as her gaze met mine, a flicker of confusion crossed her features. "Did we—" She hesitated, uncertainty washing over her. "Are we safe now?" "It's over," I breathed, though uncertainty made my words heavy. As relief coursed through me, doubt crept in like shadows at dusk. How could I be sure? How did I know we had escaped? A chill slipped between us, and I felt those forest whispers echoing in the back of my mind, mocking me with uncertainty. Some things would remain unanswered, hidden in the dark corners of the woods that we had fled. And as she stared at me, a question unasked lay between us, one that haunted my thoughts. What had we truly left behind, and at what cost? We exchanged looks, a mixture of fatigue and unanswered fears that hung heavily in the air. I wondered if it would ever truly end, or if we were merely woven into a tapestry of shadows, forever marked by the secrets lurking within the dark. I took a deep breath, trying to push the weight away. "Let's just go. Let's leave this place behind," I murmured, knowing that the echoes of that night would likely linger, unanswered and mysterious, just like the nature of that road we had traveled, or the things that had whispered to us along the way. Even now, as I watched the horizon shift, I couldn't shake the feeling that the road still beckoned, that something awaited in the silence that followed. But I knew one thing for certain. While we could drive away, we could never truly escape the shadows of the unknown.